Orpheus, a name whispered through the ages, drifting like music in the wind. They say he played with such sorrow and sweetness that the trees leaned closer, the wild beasts lay still, and even the rocks themselves wept. His lyre, a gift from the gods, became the voice of his human soul, capable of stirring both heaven and the depths of hell. He loved once, truly, deeply, and when death came to steal her away, he did not wail or rage. He sang, and with that song, he descended into the underworld, daring to do what no mortal had done, to charm the dead and bring back the living. This is no mere legend. It is a lament, a tribute to beauty, and a love so fierce it defied even death, but not destiny. And so begins the tale of Orpheus, the mortal whose music touched the divine, and whose heart was shattered by a single glance. Orpheus was born of a remarkable union in Greek mythology. His lineage, a blend of the divine and artistic. His father was Apollo, the god of music, poetry, and light, whose radiance illuminated the arts across the cosmos. His mother was Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, whose voice was a wellspring of inspiration for heroes and bards alike. From Apollo, Orpheus inherited a golden lyre, a gift that would become his most treasured companion. Calliope taught him to lace his melodies with stories, giving his music a depth that stirred the soul. This celestial heritage set him apart, marking him as a child of extraordinary potential. Orpheus grew up in Thrace, a wild and rugged region in northern Greece, where nature reigned supreme. The landscape was a tapestry of towering mountains, dense forests, and rushing rivers, each element alive with its own rhythm. As a boy, he wandered these untamed lands, listening to the songs of the wind and the murmurs of the streams. The natural world shaped him, teaching him to echo its beauty in his music. Thrace was more than a home. It was his muse, its raw energy flowing through every note he played. Here, surrounded by a wilderness, he forged a bond with the very earth that will later define his art. Even in his youth, Orpheus's musical gifts were breathtaking. When he plucked the strings of his lyre, the world seemed to hold its breath. His clear, haunting voice wove melodies that transcended ordinary sound. Animals were drawn to him. Wolves and deer alike would sit peacefully at his feet, tamed by his songs. Birds hushed their chatter, perching nearby to listen, while the trees swayed as if dancing to his tunes. His music had a magical quality, softening the hardest of hearts and calming the wildest spirits. It was said that even the rocks shifted slightly, moved by the power of his voice. To Orpheus, music was more than a skill. It was a force that connected him to everything around him. Yet, there was a quiet sadness in Orpheus's songs, a thread of longing that hinted at troubles to come. His divine talents couldn't erase the mortal fragility woven into his being. In the lilting rise and fall of his melodies, some heard echoes of the grief that would one day consume him. His early life, though filled with wonder, carried the weight of destiny he couldn't yet see. The joy of music was tempered by this undercurrent, a reminder that even the most gifted cannot escape fate. These early years were a prelude to the extraordinary and tragic path that lay ahead. In the same land where Orpheus lived, there resided a nymph named Eurydice. Her beauty was quite a marvel, like the first rays of dawn spilling over the hills, soft, radiant, and impossible to ignore. Her hair shimmered like spun gold, catching the sunlight as she moved, and her eyes held the deep, gentle green of spring leaves. But it was her spirit that truly enchanted, a kindness that rippled through the air like a song, a grace that made the world around her seem brighter. It was this essence that drew Orpheus, the master musician, into her orbit, binding their fates in a love as timeless as the earth itself. Their story began in a meadow kissed by sunlight, where Orpheus sat with his lyre, its golden strings singing beneath his deft fingers. The notes wove through the air, tender and alive, until Eurydice emerged from the woods, her steps light as a breeze. She paused, captivated, her gaze meeting his. In that instant, something unspoken bloomed between them, a harmony deeper than words. From then on, they were inseparable. Orpheus's music, once a solitary gift to the wilds, found its muse in Eurydice. Her laughter became the rhythm he chased, and her smile a chord he longed to perfect. Their wedding was a day of radiant joy, a celebration held in a grove sacred to Apollo. Sunlight streamed through the canopy, painting the ground in golden patches. The trees were draped with flowers, crimson roses, snow lilies, and wild blossoms that perfumed the air with sweetness. Orpheus stood at the center, his white robes glowing, his lyre cradled like a treasure. As he played, the melody rose like a living thing, so pure and tender that the birds hushed their songs, and the wind itself seemed to listen. Eurydice approached, her gown a cascade of silk, and her hair adorned with a crown of blossoms. As they exchanged their vows, the grove trembled with their promise. The air thrummed with the scent of jasmine and the sound of Orpheus's lyre, weaving a tapestry of bliss. Guests, both mortal and divine, stood spellbound, their hearts lifted by the love that pulsed between the couple. It was a moment when time paused, when the world held its breath to honor their union, a vow of life filled with music and light. But fate, sharp and merciless, had other designs. Mere days after their wedding, Eurydice wandered through a field, her bare feet brushing against the grass. A satyr, wild with lust, emerged from the shadows, his eyes glinting with hunger. She fled, her heart pounding, her steps quick and desperate. In her flight, she did not see the viper coiled among the roots. Its fangs struck swift and true, venom coursing through her veins. She crumpled to the earth, her beauty fading like a wilting flower. Orpheus found her beneath a cypress tree, her body still, her spirit gone, and his cries tore through the silence, a raw, jagged sound that shook the hills. Eurydice was more than his bride. She was the soul of his song, the breath between each note. Without her, his lyre sang only in sorrow, a requiem for a love stolen too soon. But in the hollow left by grief, something unshakable took root, a love too fierce to be stilled by death. With nothing but his lyre and the love still burning in his chest, he descended into the land of the dead, not as a warrior, but as a poet, to stand before Hades, king of the underworld, and beg for the return of his beloved. Orpheus stood at the edge of the world, where the earth split open to reveal the Tanarian gate, a yawning maw of darkness, its breath cold and bitter. His heart, raw from Eurydice's death, pulsed with a single purpose: to bring her back. Clutching his golden lyre, he descended, the strings trembling under his fingers, as if they too feared the abyss. The air thickened with the scent of damp stone and forgotten things, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. This was no journey for the faint. It was a mortal's defiance of death itself, driven by a love too fierce to fade. The path wound deep, past jagged cliffs and rivers that gleamed black beneath the sunless sky. First came Charon, the ferryman, his skeletal hands gripping an oar, his eyes hollow as he guarded the sticks. Orpheus raised his lyre, and a melody spilled forth, soft at first, then swelling with longing. The notes danced across the water, tender and piercing, until Charon's grim face softened. The oar stilled, and with a creak of ancient wood, he rowed Orpheus across, the river's whispers drowned by song. Next loomed Cerberus, the three-headed hound, his growls a thunder that shook the cavern walls. Jaws dripped with foam, eyes burned red, yet Orpheus did not falter. His fingers plucked a lullaby, each chord a thread of peace woven through the beast's fury. One head drooped, then another, until all three laid still, snores rumbling like distant storms. The gate to Hades' realm stood open, and Orpheus stepped through, his music a shield against the gloom. Before the throne of Hades, the air grew heavy, thick with the weight of eternal rule. The god of the underworld sat cloaked in shadow, his crown a jagged silhouette in the flickering torchlight. Beside him, Persephone, her face pale yet warm, watched with eyes that knew both love and loss. Orpheus knelt, his lyre cradled like an offering, and sang. His voice rose, a tide of sorrow and hope, each note a plea for Eurydice's return. He sang of their wedding day, of sunlight and vows, of her laughter that once lit his world, and of the viper that stole it away. His song was no mere lament, it was a cry that pierced even the stone-cold heart of the dead. Hades' gaze was unyielding, yet Persephone's hand trembled as she brushed her cheek, the melody stirring memories of spring and separation. She leaned towards her husband and whispered a thread in the silence. Hades' brow furrowed. For a moment, the underworld held its breath. Then he spoke. The cavern trembled as his decree settled into the stillness. Eurydice could ascend, but only if Orpheus led her out without a single glance behind. His voice, deep as the Styx, carried a warning, a thread of mercy laced with menace. Orpheus stood frozen, his chest heaving with a storm of relief and dread. His hands gripped his lyre, its strings now a lifeline to his crumbling resolve. Joy flared within him, bright and fleeting, only to be devoured by the gnawing fear of the task ahead. Persephone lingered in the shadows, her gaze soft yet mournful, as if she already foresaw the weight of this fragile gift. Then a shift, a ripple in the air, subtle as breath against stone. Eurydice emerged from the depths, her presence a whisper at first, a silhouette born of gloom. Orpheus couldn't see her, couldn't turn, but he felt her, a pull at his soul, a warmth he had mourned as lost. His knees nearly gave beneath the weight of it. She was there, just behind him, her essence trembling on the edge of existence. The silence roared in his ears, broken only by the slow, steady drip of water echoing through the dark. He ached to call her name, to hear her voice cut through the void, but his lips stayed pressed shut, afraid even a sound might unravel the fragile bargain. He stepped forward, the cold stone biting through his sandals, each movement a prayer. The path twisted upward, a cruel ribbon of shadow and damp. Eurydice followed, her footsteps soundless, her nearness a phantom promise. Orpheus's heart thundered, a frantic rhythm against the stillness. He pictured her as she had been, eyes bright with laughter, hair catching the sun. Now she was a shade trailing behind him, her form delicate, her second chance strung on the thinnest thread. The air thickened with a scent of moss and damp earth, hints of the living world bleeding in as they climbed. Then a glow pierced the distance, daylight. Salvation so close it ached in his chest. Every step tested him. Doubt clawed at his mind. Was she truly there? Could the gods be so cruel as to mock him with silence? His fingers twitched, aching to reach back, to feel her hand in his. But he couldn't. Not yet. Love and fear warred within him, each breath a vow to trust, to endure. The light grew, the air softened, and still he walked. Eurydice's unseen presence both beckoned and burdened, pulling him towards the surface, toward hope or heartbreak. Orpheus teetered on the edge of salvation, where the underworld's shadow unraveled into the tender embrace of light. The cavern, once a tomb of obsidian gloom, softened into earthen tones, ochre and amber streaked with veins of quartz, like constellations trapped in stone. Roots, fragile and reaching, pierced the ceiling, brushing his shoulders as if the living world above were yearning to draw him home. The air trembled with a scent of dew-kissed grass, a faint perfume of freedom dancing on his tongue. Before him, the light unfurled in radiant hues, gold-braided with the shy blue of dawn, a beacon singing of life renewed. Yet, behind him, the underworld lingered, its cold breath coiling around his ankles, a spectre unwilling to release its prey. His footsteps rang out, a solitary rhythm in the vast hollow, each echo a thread of hope stretched taut. But her steps, he strained to hear them and found only silence, a void that swallowed sound and certainty alike. His breath hitched, misting in the chill, a fragile wisp of warmth pressed against the encroaching dark. Within him a storm raged, hope and terror clashing like lightning and thunder, their sparks igniting memories of her. Eurydice, his heart's melody, her laughter a song that once rivaled even his lyre. He saw her again, twirling through the sunlit fields, her hair a cascade of midnight, her gaze a hearth where his soul had found rest. She was close now, wasn't she? Just beyond reach. A breath, a heartbeat, a whisper away from the world they had lost. She follows, he whispered, the words barely more than a breath. A prayer meant to anchor him against the gnawing doubt clawing at the edge of his mind. But the silence mocked him, a hollow, unyielding thing, echoing with all the things he feared to name. Then a sound, soft, fleeting, like the rustle of petals drifting to earth, or the sigh of a breeze through the forgotten leaves. His pulse surged. Was it her? A misstep perhaps, or an uneven stone, a breath she couldn't hold back? Or was it a trick, some echo from the underworld itself, spun from shadow and sorrow, luring him to ruin? These questions burned, a coal buried deep in his chest, searing through his resolve. His heart, a caged bird, battering wildly against its prison of ribs, desperate for release. But he could bear it no longer. In a heartbeat, his will shattered, a dam undone by the flood of yearning. His body turned, slow and inexorable, as though time itself held its breath, mourning the choice undone. His head swiveled, a marionette pulled by the strings of desperation, his eyes wide and wild, scurrying the gloom for the shape his soul had never stopped reaching for. Orpheus's breath caught in his throat as he turned, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm of hope and dread. There she stood, Eurydice, radiant in the fragile light spilling from the world above, a beacon against the underworld's lingering dark. Her beauty was a fleeting hymn, her form aglow like the final ember of a dying flame, her eyes twin lanterns of love and sorrow. For one suspended moment, their gazes met, and in that silent exchange, a lifetime surged forth. Every tender word, every stolen touch, poised now on the precipice of oblivion. But the light that crowned her began to falter, as if the world above could no longer bear to hold her. Her outline trembled, softening like a sketch smudged by an unseen hand. She was slipping, scattering like mist in a sudden wind, her presence drawn apart by the underworld's cruel breath. Her hand reached for him, delicate as a petal torn from a wilted bloom, her lips shaping a farewell too dark and faint to break the silence. Orpheus lunged, desperate to grasp her, to anchor her to the living world, but she melted beneath his touch, her form collapsing into shadow, her essence sinking into the cold stone. A single tear gleamed on her cheek, a prism of light suspended in the gloom, before it too vanished, swallowed by the underworld's endless hush. In an instant, she was gone. Only a shiver in the air remained, a breath of warmth, lost to the dark. Orpheus's cry tore from his throat, a jagged wail of anguish that clawed at the cavern walls, as if the stone might crack and give her back. He crumpled to the ground, hands scrambling at the emptiness she left behind. His voice breaking into fragments as he called her name into the abyss. But the darkness only drank his pleas, offering no echo, no mercy, just the hollow weight of loss, pressing down like a second death. Beside him, his lyre laid silent, and its strings slack with grief, mute mourners to a love twice stolen by the shadows. Eurydice was gone, and with her, the melody that once defined Orpheus' soul. He emerged from the underworld's maw, like a ghost clothed in mortal flesh, his golden lyre dangling from his hand like a broken limb. The world above, once a canvas of vibrant hues, now lay muted in ash-grey despair. The sun burned cold, its light a cruel parody of the warmth she had taken with her. His voice, once a divine gift that had swayed gods and stilled monsters, cracked into a hollow wail, a raw, jagged lament spiraling into the wind, unanswered by heaven or earth. He wandered trace, a shadow drifting through the woods he'd once enchanted. The forest, his old companions, stood mute, their branches no longer swaying to his melodies, but drooping low, as if in mourning. His lyre, once a beacon of harmony, now voiced only dirges, each pluck a tear, each chord a wound laid bare. Birds fled at his passing, their songs silenced by the keening sorrow that spilled from him. Rivers slowed to a crawl, mirroring his grief, their waters trembling beneath the weight of his loss. Even nature, once stirred by his joy, now recoiled, unable to bear the sound of a heart so utterly broken. Orpheus shunned the world of men and women alike, his spirit too raw for mortal touch. Where once he'd woven love into every note, he now turned away from it, his heart a sealed tomb. Some whispered that he sought solace in the company of youths, his songs a fragile bridge to fleeting comfort. But even these bonds frayed beneath the ever-looming shadow of Eurydice's memory. He roamed alone, a bard unmoored, his music a mirror to the abyss, beautiful yet unbearable, a requiem for a love stolen twice. The Maenads, wild devotees of Dionysus, watched from the hills, their eyes glinting with fervor and scorn. Orpheus's refusal to honor their god, his rejection of their frenzied rites, a direct affront to the god of wine, revelry, and ecstasy, stoked their rage. One dusk, as the sun bled crimson, they descended in a storm of shrieks and flailing limbs. Their voices surged into a cacophony, drowning his mournful strains. He stood, unresisting, his lyre clutched like a fading ember. They tore at him, nails rending flesh, their fury a tempest that shattered his mortal frame. Even death, however, could not silence Orpheus's woe. His disembodied head tumbled in the river, bloodied locks trailing like dark ribbons in the current. Beside it, his golden lyre lay, its strings trembling still, kissed by the water's mournful caress. Together they drifted, a spectral duet, his voice rising in a ghostly whisper, singing of Eurydice through lips now forever still. The river bore on them, a sombre cortege beneath the weeping sky, until they washed ashore on Lesbos, where his song lingered as an oracle of grief. The Muses, with tender hands, gathered his scattered remains and enshrined them beneath Olympus's watchful peak. In the underworld, Eurydice felt the music before she even heard it, a tremor in her soul pulling her from the endless grey of the asphodel fields. She stood, motionless and luminous, as each note conjured memories of sunlight, laughter, and a love once shared. When his shade arrived, borne along the same river that had carried his mortal remains, their meeting was a silent collision of longing and grief in Elysium, the realm of peace for the pure of heart. No words were needed. Their eyes spoke of trials endured and love unbroken. Hand in hand, they turned from the Styx's dark waters and walked into a grove untouched by time, where ghostly blossoms whispered of rebirth. Beneath that eternal canopy, Orpheus sang once more, softer now, a gentle melody that even the Furies paused to moan. Above, the world felt the ripples of his passing. In trust, where his body had been torn asunder, the Maenads wept, their frenzy giving way to remorse as the lyre's song reached their ears. Apollo, watching from his golden chariot, shed a single tear that ignited a star, a fleeting tribute to the sun he could not save. On Lesbos, where his head and lyre washed ashore, the sands hummed with the echoes of his music, and the island's poets found their verses forever enriched, as if Orpheus's spirit whispered inspiration into their dreams. Centuries later, travelers spoke of strange occurrences along the Hebrus, a melody on the wind when no musician was near, or a glimpse of a golden lyre shimmering beneath the water's surface. Mothers hushed their children with tales of Orpheus, warning them to listen closely to the river's song, for it carried the wisdom of a heart that loved too deeply to be silenced. And in the heavens, the constellation Lyra burned bright, its strings plucked by an unseen hand, a reminder that some songs will endure beyond the grave, echoing through time to those willing to listen. The story of Orpheus does not end in triumph, but in quiet reverberation. A love pursued beyond death, undone by a single moment of doubt. A song silenced, yet never forgotten. Perhaps that is why his name endures, because his failure is so deeply human. We know what it means to look back, to question, and to hope so fiercely that we undo ourselves. In Orpheus, we see not just a legend, but a reflection of love that clings beyond reason, of grief that refuses to settle, and of beauty that flickers and fades. His voice may have fallen silent, but the music lingers in the hush before a song begins, in the ache behind certain melodies, in the stories we still tell when we speak of loss and longing. Somewhere beneath the surface of all things, his lyre still hums, not with grandeur, but with memory. And in that memory, he remains, not a hero, not a god, but something far more enduring. A soul who loved and lost and sang. Thank you for watching.